Welcome to the See Together podcast. With your help joining our Patreon, we can keep making inspiring interviews possible. For as little as $3 a month, you can join our vision to help the See Together podcast continue. On this episode, we are featuring Clayton, mom and founder of Salt Gypsy, a sustainable global swimwear brand based in Australia. Dani shares her own journey of starting Salt Gypsy inspired by her New Zealand roots, and she opens up with vulnerability on her behind-the-scenes mental health journey as a leader in business.
Kia ora, and thank you for having me speak with you today, Bree. I am Dani, and I'm from New Zealand, and I'm the founder of women's surf company Salt Gypsy, and I'm currently based in Byron Bay, Australia, and have a business and am mumming to a 2-year-old awesome little toddler. So yeah, that's me.
Yay, thank you so much, Dani, for coming today, and I'm so excited to hear from you, just being a forerunner in women's surfing for swimwear and for surf leggings, how you're the first woman to make surf leggings, which is huge. So first off, I was just curious on how being a New Zealander influenced how you run your business, especially just, launching or having your business mainly start out of Australia, which is completely different from New Zealand. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, I've never had this question specifically asked, but I definitely, when I think about myself and my family and cultural upbringing, being from New Zealand, it's a massive influence on me. And so I was really excited to see this question, and because it absolutely 100 million% influences how I think about the world and how I've worked to build a business, and ended up in Australia partly, completely not intentionally, and here we are. But in terms of having a women's surf company, Australia is obviously a much larger country and population with a much bigger market. That all said, having come from New Zealand and wholesale sales experience within the surf industry prior to leaving in 2010, I could my work experience there just showed me how small New Zealand marketplace is, and you need to be global right off the bat for, the global ocean women who I work to cater for. But in terms of growing up in New Zealand and how that influences me as an adult and going through my younger womanhood, I very much was a child of the 80s and 90s in New Zealand, and we had some really amazing campaigns come out during those years, and two of them that I remember very clearly was the Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, and I think it was around the late 80s or very early 90s when we first received our green bins from our local council, and there was a huge push and huge education around recycling, so that very quickly became an inherent part of everyday life, was separating out our recyclables, and then that carried right through into when I was a uni student at design school in the early 2000s, and I ended up doing a design degree, but I majored in sculpture, which was the broadest pathway I could choose, and basically meant we could do anything. And I ended up using a lot of recycled window glass and making new objects from discarded sheets of window and installing my new objects into nature and in all sorts of different natural environments and landscapes, particularly tide lines. And then I was documenting my sculptural installations through photography and video. So I was bootstrapping my way through uni, and even then, always scouring through op shops and junkyards and things, looking for objects that I could remake into something new that had some value. And I remember going through uni and just like absolutely loving my degree. Every year got better and better, and I just frothed right from the very beginning. So I was just super frothed by the end of my schooling. But what I think something that kept coming up for me because I was doing the sculptural practice was there is so much stuff out in this world. I don't need to make anything new, but if I can use discarded materials as my source and then remake something of value, that's what I ended up doing and basing, my degree installation exhibition work around. And when I look now at Salt Gypsy, and there's just such parallels from what I was doing as a 20-something-year-old uni student to how I'm building this business and using these extracted waste materials such as ocean debris from ghost fishing nets, carpet and textile offcuts that would otherwise end up in landfill. So using these raw materials that are waste, and they're now being turned into much more longer lasting stretch fabrics, for example. And I just really like the synchronicity between what I do now with what I studied. So that was really the whole recycling, upcycling, education and cultural background that I came with. And then the other one, I'm not sure when it started, but there was a campaign on being a tidy Kiwi, and there was this little cool Kiwi bird symbol, and there was that one. There was also Support New Zealand Made, which also had the Kiwi bird symbol. There was a big push to buy New Zealand made products that I remember as a child. And so again, when I was at uni, I helped facilitate some markets where all us art students could, there were jewellery stalls and people making things and selling their paintings, and we'd have these markets throughout the year. And so that was always a big thing as well, was to support local New Zealand designers and artists and stuff. So supporting independent makers has been a big part of I guess just my consumer behaviour, and that's not really gone away. So I think that I hope that answers that question a bit.
Cool. Thank you, Danny, for sharing all of that. And I feel like it's so cool to see how, like you were saying, your younger years just translated over into your business with your art background. And so you started making leggings just for you and your friends when you were in Indonesia, right? Or
in the Maldives, Maldives. So I left New Zealand in 2010 to go and work as a snorkel guide at a surf resort in the Maldives, which was a place I didn't know exactly where it was. I had to Google map it and go, it's this weird abstract place that I'd heard about is amazing and tropical, but didn't realise that it gets really pumping surf. And so found myself living and working at this surf resort in the Maldives, and ended up spending 3 full surf seasons over there. So my third year was 2012, and by this stage I've met my now fiance, and we were working on a surf charter boat and operating surf charters. So that was my third year working under the tropical sun and being in the surf all day, every day for months and months on end, which was amazing. But I was also becoming increasingly conscious of sun damage, and I'm still frightened of skin cancer and melanoma, which is not something that we usually talk about in women's surfing or swimwear, or marketing around any of that. So the summer prior, while we were back in Australia, I'd kind of started setting up this blog that I was wanting to use while I was working on the boat again, as a way to connect with like-minded female surfers while I was going to be surrounded by dudes for months in the end. And then and I also wanted to showcase cool indie women's surf brands that had just started popping up within the 1 to 2 years prior to that, of which there were 4, and of those 4 only 1 remain in business, which is interesting, and I think leads into one of your other questions. But so that was kind of my goal, and I was buying, a couple of surf bikinis and cool rash guards from these indie brands, but couldn't find anything for my legs. So off we go to start the season, and then we end up doing a visa run to Bali in June of 2012, and had been looking for surf leggings, not finding anything for the previous 6 months, I ended up getting a couple of pairs made in Bali during that visa run to my specific design, and I sourced a couple of fruity pieces of lycra fabrics and did these panelled leggings, took them back to the boat and just started wearing them, and didn't really set out to launch a product or have a brand or start a business. I just really needed surf leggings for myself, and it was as simple as not finding anything in the marketplace that either spoke to me and my personal sense of style or that I could afford. They were either like really just average generic black leggings, and the other option were like super expensive $160 plus triathlete style compression leggings and skins and things. I was like, wow, that's a bit much for me to go surfing in. And so that's how I ended up with the first iteration of our surf leggings, and then spent the next few months doing a lot of serious R&D. And later that year kicked off the concept of customizable surf leggings. So during that time, I was wearing their leggings, able to get some photos of me wearing the leggings in the surf, and I was blogging about them, and turns out they are one of the most practical things you can ever surf in for a myriad of reasons, and particularly when you're traveling for surfing. So they're just a really great product, and that's kind of kick-started everything.
Oh, it's so cool how something so small can just like burst into this huge creative project. I'm curious in the process that went from you starting to make your own leggings because you wanted to, and then how it transformed into like this global business that Salt Gypsy is today. And so I'm just curious in like, how did you have patience with yourself in the process of kind of, I guess you could say, accidentally starting a business maybe?
That's also a really interesting question. I don't know if patience is the right word. When I was listening to you, I was thinking it's definitely more been all about tenacity for me and extreme persistence and determination. And that was something that I learned from my wonderful stepdad, Mike, who I grew up with, and grew up watching him build his own business and be self-employed. And there's this great quote by Calvin Coolidge all about persistence and that overriding talent in education, and in terms of, I don't have it right in front of me, but I used to be able to, say it verbatim, but I haven't read it in a wee while. But I think that's something that I've practiced, is the skill of being tenacious.
Did you ever feel at some point in the process that you wanted things to go faster or like move faster, or you wanted to see things happen?
I'll touch on a couple of things with that. So I kicked off basically end of 2012 with the first launch of customizable surf leggings. Received about 20 orders from my blog and Facebook page group of peeps. And then it wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years later that I read the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And I was like, well, shucks, this is what I've been doing for the last several years, is organically running a lean startup without knowing that's the methodology around what I've been doing. So where you basically launch with a prototype version of a product rather than a finished, polished piece. And then each production that you do just is continually tweaking and making that product better. So essentially that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years. And I mention this and I reference the Lean Startup because I started with $0. I had no money, which is why I launched with customizable surf leggings, because I couldn't afford to go out and order 50 or 100 or 500 units of my product. I had nothing except for an ability to think outside the box from my uni student days of also running on very lean resources, and some imagination to go, okay, here's like a kind of template. If anyone's keen to colour by numbers and pick and choose what colour and print they want to put in each panel, I'll get them made for you and we'll ship them out a month later. So in terms of like patience of building over the last 8 years and doing that lean startup iteration over and over again, it's been very challenging to be patient, especially when I see other businesses or brands raise $8 million before they even have products or, you know, a brand. And it can be very frustrating to see other businesses fast track in that way. But the flip side of that, and the flip side of growing as a small and organic business, is I've worked extremely hard for a very long time to really work on my customer relationships, have such direct engagement with my customers, and really build a demand-led business for the most part. So, and that might touch on to more sustainable fashion business practices, which are, you know, in light of the current global situation, that's more and more coming up within the fashion business readings and research that I'm doing. Well, I've been doing that organically right from the start for lack of having millions of dollars in capital or, you know, even 50 grand. Like, I just haven't had that. So that's where frustration comes in for me sometimes, is just not having a bunch of money to put into marketing and going filming a bunch of cool ladies surfing in wherever. It's been myself, my friends, anyone I can rope into a photo shoot, as I can afford to pay professional photographers, etc. So yeah, I guess I have been quite patient, but that's not to say I haven't been extremely frustrated as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for just being vulnerable and like sharing the truth of like what it's like to run a business, you know, because I think a lot of people that haven't been there don't fully like understand. I feel like running a business is like having a child, kind of, almost, you know. You have to like take care of it all the time, check in.
Totally. Yeah.
And I guess that kind of goes into the next question I have for you. Just kind of being a forerunner of the first woman to make women's surf leggings, the first person ever to make women's surf leggings. How do you maintain confidence in your brand and your vision, just knowing that there's a lot of other brands now doing surf leggings? And I guess that kind of can come up, you know, like the comparison thing. And so how do you kind of just stay true to your vision and stuff?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because now everyone's, of course, when I say everyone, I mean competitors large and small are now making surf leggings, turtleneck, crop, rash guards, etc. It's very hard to create a very unique design, have that registered. I don't think you can patent designs within fashion, but to have a registered fashion design is expensive, especially when you've got more than one style that you need to register. But I think it also comes back to the vision of what your business or your company or brand has, and that's actually something that I'm working on with some advisors and mentors at the moment, is coming back to what the heck is my vision for this business. And it's always been to advocate for everyday women's style in the lineup. So I want to see cooler shit in the water that women are wearing, feeling confident and feeling comfortable, feeling really stylish, and having that confidence translate into surfing better, which I have seen tangibly manifest itself. So that is the greater vision, is for women to feel elevated and stylish and confident in the water, and not all these other things that I'm sure each of us have dealt with at some time, feeling unconfident, feeling by yourself, feeling super self-conscious in skin tight fabrics, etc. So in terms of that, my vision is much greater than trying to have the coolest surf leggings, or, you know what I mean? the vision goes beyond that. Like I think competition is great, and competitive brands can only help strengthen your business if you have a more collaborative approach in terms of like, cool, well, perhaps a greater goal is that now there are all these different options and offerings for women to pick and choose and create their own style. And I think that's a really positive thing. The other thing is the more options we have for cool sun protection, hopefully and ideally, the less cases of skin cancer and melanoma that we will have for any ocean person, but particularly for my group of peeps, which is ocean women and young girls coming up. I want them to be able to see other women fully covering up but not looking super silly or super uncool, and actually going, it's absolutely fine to cover up and feel confident and surf with more confidence once they're in the lineup, and really owning their place.
Yeah, that's so awesome, Danny. I feel like you're one of the few brands that kind of offers that as a fashionable option, just covering up, And do you feel like kind of New Zealand inspired that too? Because I know that the sun is pretty strong there.
Totally. So I grew up knowing that there's this huge hole huge hole in the ozone layer. And I can remember when I was probably around 9 or 10 starting to get more, like everyone in general starting to become more and more conscious of slip, slop, slat, sunscreen, hats, covering up, because I think burn time in New Zealand, I'm not sure what it is, say today, but it's like under 10 minutes of burning, and burning seriously bad, like not cool. And so, I think there's just the climate change as well, and just things have developed so much, and even just my lifetime, that what about our children and their children and future generations? So, definitely coming from New Zealand, have been really sun-conscious of, just having to cover up and like always sunscreen and zinc on our face and hats as much as you can. And then they just, 10 years ago, there wasn't much on offer for fully covering up in terms of cool, stylish, long rash guards. And that's why I designed our turtleneck, so that it's a fashion forward cut, but it covers up the thinnest part of our skin, which shows the first signs of aging and sun damage. And so that's where that style developed from, as surf leggings. So there was nothing to cover my legs. So that's where it's.
Wow. That's crazy. I had no idea about the neck thing.
Yeah, well, ladies, take care of them. And also I highly recommend rosehip oil as a really beautiful like skincare, like to add into your skincare. Rituals for yourself is like I have olive skin, so I don't tend to burn as quickly as other types of skin, but I still have been burnt in the past. And I have had quite oily skin, but rosehip oil is just this really beautiful plant extract, and it's just really helps with decreasing or slowing down the signs of sun damage and aging and things. And it's just, I don't know, if you can rub that on even your hands, face and neck several times a week. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Cool. Thank you so much, Danny, for sharing that. I think it's really important, because I think maybe you're the only swimwear brand owner that I've ever talked to that talks about this, like skin cancer and protecting our skin. So that's pretty powerful. That's what also inspired your business.
Yeah, totally. And it was like when I first arrived in the Maldives, like it was an absolute novelty to be surfing in bikinis and warm water for more than 30 minutes, because in New Zealand, even in summer, and I'm a bit of a wussy, there are a lot more hardcore ladies from home, but I just was always wearing a wetsuit even through summer a lot of the time. And the novelty value of being in the Maldives that first season was amazing, but then it didn't take too long to kind of get a bit tired of being in the sun so much. Like it's quite exhausting as well sometimes for, weeks and months on end, but just so much sun coming at you, and then of course living on a boat was like, far out, this is really intense, and I don't need to have a tan. Like I just want to focus on my surfing, not the colour, a tan butt line or anything like that. Like,
yeah. Health is number one. We don't care about a nice butt tan.
No, and maybe I did when I was like 19 and, forming my younger woman surfing identity. But, and maybe that comes with age as well. And like I'm 40 next month, so I'm very, the last 10 years of surfing a lot more than I used to, say prior to moving to the Maldives. Just far more sun conscious, and we just don't, our bodies don't need the damage or the skin cancers or melanomas, so
Well, thank you for that. So how did your perspective change about business while being a businesswoman? Did you have certain perceptions about business prior to starting?
That's a great question. I think because I'd grown up seeing my dad Mike start up his own business and be self-employed and grow to a small company, and I have been very aware of the time and effort and sacrifice that goes into having your own business. But then I think it's probably not been until I've been in it myself that there's just so much to learn, especially when you don't have a team and you don't have the financial or human resources to outsource. It's you doing everything. It can get really, really draining, and burnout. I've had burnout on a very regular basis for a long time, and I read a bit about how that's been glorified and we're all on the hustle and blah blah blah, but actually burnout isn't fun, and perhaps there are different ways that we can structure and build our businesses that are more sustainable for the people actually in the company. And I think what this pandemic is showing, in particular at the moment, it's highlighting a lot of that stuff. And, people are now working remotely. And referencing back to the burnout, that's a very real and very common thing to experience from, talking with other friends and lots of reading and research that I do around business and building a business. Another thing that I've found for me personally that's come up over the last few years of having a business and all of the things that come with that is a real sense of passion for wanting to support other women in business. And now that I'm 8 years down the track and have only for the last probably 8 to 9 months have I actually started to personally invest more, or actually invest in consultants and mentors, that's something that I wish I'd started and known about years ago, actually, because for me, reaching out and finding the business support that I've wanted and needed, and didn't realise was actually a really key part to building a successful business. I would like to now be able to start doing that for myself and peers and, next generation coming up. And so for me, that's been a bit of a perspective change from thinking about me, my business, what do I need, to more like, okay, here are all of the things that I've been learning. Now, how can I use this knowledge and these skills to start supporting and helping other women like me who are maybe a little bit behind in terms of the track of building a business, but also seeing the explosion of women in business as well, and just going far out. This is a really exciting time. And wherever there is hardship and limitations, there's always opportunities. So, there are just so many things that I've learned that I'd love to be able to share more and be able to reach other ladies and network and support each other in a more collaborative way. And I think that there have been, several things within my own business journey, on top of now this global situation that we're all experiencing, that there is just such an amazing opportunity to shift the way people and companies have been operating as businesses and building a business. So, yeah, I think that's where I've had a bit of a perspective shift in particular. Yeah, it's from me, myself, the individual, to more like we, the group, or we, the community. So that's been interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. What are a few perspective shifts that you would want people to know who are kind of on the other side that haven't had any experience with business? I know before you're kind of talking about COVID and how we're kind of letting go of these expectations of ourselves to like perform to a certain level. Do you feel like society as a whole, if we have that perspective shift, then we'll just have a new way of seeing businesses, because I think a lot of people have certain perspectives about like business, or even like a negative perspective sometimes, like, oh, businesses are about money, or like a lot of times people don't realize that there are real people behind businesses, And so what are a few perspective shifts that you want like people to know about like you being like, especially like a woman in business and just like a person in business?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm like, full disclaimer, still learning a lot myself. One of the things I would initially like to respond is that profit is not a bad or dirty word. If you would like to have a profitable business, that's awesome and amazing. And I, for one, definitely want a profitable business, because it means that you can then go out to do the more impactful work that your business exists for. So for me, I need to be able to pay myself a wage that's a living wage in order to keep running this company, to be able to do the work I really want to do, which is helping support women feel amazing in the lineup, elevating everyday female surfers experience, being a part of that, and being able to connect with and work with like-minded female surfers, as well as facilitate like decreasing the barriers to entry for women and girls into the ocean. So how can I support more local community groups through my business? Well, my business needs to make money to do all of those things. And I've been learning that over a very long 8-year journey where I've worked for less than minimum wage or zero wage at all. And so that's where, I'm having a personal journey myself, and that's why I started investing in consultant and mentor to go, tell me what to do. How do I make this thing profitable so that I can pay myself? Because at the moment, I'm not contributing much to my family expenses. And that for me really sucks, because that doesn't kind of align with my personal values of having financial independence for me as a woman and a working mother. So that would be that thing, that I don't think profit is a bad or a scary term, and it's okay to want to make money. That all said, I think from what I'm learning now is more about the donut economics theory behind business and how business and economics work within society. And Kate Raworth, I think that's how you say her name, she's an economist from the UK who's written a book and written a theory behind donut economics. And that theory is really incorporating social and environmental, components to business and the whole economic model of working, making money, paying bills, shopping, working, but instead of just that traditional way, like starting to incorporate, well, how do, the resources that we draw from the earth, how are we supporting those within what we do of living, working, spending. And I'm probably not explaining that very well because I am still learning myself, but that's a framework I'm looking at really shifting my business or looking at all the different parts of how my business is operating and going, well, okay, is this matching with this value? Is this working within this kind of new way of thinking about economics and consumerism? And I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but I just think as well, if there were any, what I would want people to know is like it's okay to start small, but thinking on a much larger scale in terms of how you and your business or company fits within the larger world environment, I guess. And what are your intentions with your business, and what are the different ways that you can build and have impact that's environmentally and socially responsible, basically.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny.
That's a really tricky question, I think.
And I definitely want to look up the donut theory now, what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting, Brie. I think you'd be really into it. Yeah.
Cool. I'll definitely look it up. Next question is, you're a mom, and that's like such a big thing because you're also running like a huge business. Well, not a small, big, a small, widespread business. And so how do you balance your business and your family and just being a mom?
Great question. And for me personally, I have found that balance is an elusive ideal, and by no means have I had that. What I have had to learn a very challenging way over the last 3 years is setting up boundaries, where being pregnant and having a kid, I would happily work 24/7, 7 days a week. And there were periods of time where I did do that, aside from maybe sleeping for 7 hours in a quick surf when we were living in Bali. But yeah, so now it's just learning things for myself that I've had to do for self-preservation of me as an individual, but also for my family, because my family life's been very impacted by me being self-employed and really giving this a good hard nudge. So even just things of like 5 p.m. I knock off, because 5 p.m. I pick my boy up from daycare, and then I'm on like mum duty, which, is amazing, but it's extremely taxing and exhausting at the same time. And I can't multitask those two parts of my life, because I've tried that and it ends up with me extremely frustrated. I'm not giving my child my full attention, which he needs, nor my partner. And so I've had to really learn to set up that kind of boundary. And also weekends, I just generally don't work weekends, because I need to invest that time into my family with my partner when he's home, as well as trying to squeeze a 30-minute walk by myself or whatever it is, or trying to get in the ocean while my partner's not working himself so he can take care of the grommet, just things like that. And so I'd definitely say that although I don't feel like I have a true idealistic balance between the two, I would say that I've had to learn to put in place some kind of boundaries, because the two very much affect each other when I'm not 100% all in. So I need to kind of literally separate that time in order to be the better version of me for each component.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing what you do. You're amazing for being a mom and running a business. So,
thank you. Yeah, it's challenging, but I mean, there's definitely really rewarding moments, and the rare occasion I can take Oscar to the beach to hang out with surf aunties if we were doing a photo shoot, for example. Those have been really cool, but the older he's getting, the more kind of time intensive he is as well. So I can't just plonk him on the beach while I do some work around the photo shoot, for example. Like, he does require a lot more attention. So it was easier when he was a little baby and not really moving around and calling to integrate the two together. But as he's getting older, it's definitely made me realize I I just can't blend the two. I really have to separate at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And going back to what you were saying earlier about burnout and how you mentioned burnout is a reoccurring thing for you sometimes with just running a business. And I think that mental health isn't really talked about enough in the business world, or like the surf industry, or even I think about, Instagram and what role that takes place in surfing now, just having these Instagram accounts. And so that's kind of a widespread thought. But do you have moments in your day or week where you feel like you get kind of overwhelmed? And how do you kind of take a step back to recognize those moments and kind of slow down or adjust? And what are some tips that you have for yourself to reground?
This is such a fantastic question, Brie. I love it. Thank you so much for asking. Because to be completely and brutally honest, like, although I've never taken medication to help with depression, there have been several periods in my life where I probably should have sought help. And most recently was May of last year, where I just completely broke down. So mental health is a very huge and undiscussed topic, which we are seeing more and more coming up. Obviously, it does affect everyone, myself included. It's having this effect. I've never told anyone. Sorry.
Oh, no, don't apologize. Take whatever time you need right now to.
Yeah, I've had a very, very stressful and intense 3 years. That started with a second business, then falling pregnant, working right up until 3 or 4 days before I gave birth to my boy, which meant I went into motherhood and becoming a new mum extremely exhausted and haven't really recovered from. And it just kind of had to pull out the bootstraps, which I think many, many, many people do, including, I know, my own mum, and probably generations of women before me whose shoulders I stand on. So I had that period of time last year, but it was only earlier this year that I actually sought help from a GP and was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue, for which I'm now, working on my health now that I have some time and the capacity to do so. So I very much admit to soldiering through and not seeking help when I've needed to in the past. And I'm working now to change things around because I can see that it's obviously not helpful to just sometimes soldier on, and that it is absolutely okay to reach out for help, especially medical and professional help. So with overwhelm from business and then overwhelm from motherhood being a fairly constant thing in my life, I definitely find that even just going for a quick walk around the block for like 20 minutes with Rage Against the Machine in the earphones can just really help boost and get some endorphins releasing. And prior to baby and 2 businesses, I would have the time to just go and jump in the ocean, and going surfing was always my stress relief, because that's something that makes me feel physically and mentally and emotionally strong and balanced, and as I'm sure every ocean person could relate to. That's why we love doing what we do. And side note, if anyone's interested, there's also the Blue Mind theory written by Wallace J. Nichols, I think, who talks about how we are physically affected by proximity to the ocean and being in the sea. So I can absolutely identify with that as well, and surfing and even just jumping in dunking your head under the ocean has just been such a big thing for me. So to then be with the last 3 years of, business and mumming, and then not physically being able to go in the ocean because I literally have not had any time for myself, and all our families in New Zealand. So my partner was working away for a lot of that time. I've been solo parenting on top of trying to manage 2 businesses. That's been a really massive thing that I don't think I've given myself much acknowledgement for. So I've had to try and recognize that, okay, I'm having a bit of a shit week or a crap day. I need to just find 20 minutes to go for that walk around the block in lieu of not being able to get in the sea today or whenever it is, or talk to my partner and let her know that I'm really not okay. So, yeah, that's kind of what my tip is: exercise and seek professional help, and reach out to your friends and your family if and when you can. And to be open and honest as much as you feel comfortable doing, because at the end of the day, if we're not ourselves feeling okay, like, it just has such a far-reaching impact long term, obviously, as well as on the people around you. And I'm not by any means under the impression, or I'm not someone that advocates to be happy all the time. I don't think that's normal or natural. I think it's, more natural. We have these ups and downs, and that's fine. But if you experience a prolonged period of downtime and you're really struggling to find your way through that, then please reach out for help, and please try and do some form of exercise, because that will be an immediate boost to help you through getting out of the funk.
Thank you, Danny, for no, don't apologize. Thank you for being so vulnerable. There's so much power in that vulnerability, and I think people will be able to relate and connect to you. And I just really appreciate how you're opening up about mental health, because it is such a serious thing. Mental health stuff runs in my family too.
So I'm exactly the same.
Really?
We've got all of that in my family as well. So it's very familiar. And I've in my immediate family, I know some family members have, regularly at periods of time taken antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. And though it's just prolific. Like, it's just a part of everyday life for many, many people. And so I can totally relate to that as well. And it can sometimes be a bit hard when you know that other people, like, to not compare yourself, where you're like, oh, I'm not that bad, or I can get my way through, or I'll be all right. Well, actually, maybe you won't, and actually maybe it is time that you did even just go talk to a health professional to, have someone's outside opinion rather than your own chatter.
Yeah. It's definitely something that especially because I know when I last saw you, when I met you, when I saw you in Australia, I was in a burnout when you saw me last year. I was in a major burnout. And then going to New Zealand really helped me. That really helped me, just forced me to slow down, especially the culture in New Zealand is very slow, or at least where I was in New Zealand.
That's so good.
Yeah. But it's definitely something that I lately have been reflecting on again, especially this summer break, because I'm like, I don't want to work on too many things at one time, because I'm like, I don't want to burn out by the fall term. And
that's it. I think and maybe it's a part of growing older as well, and becoming more self-aware and learning more about yourself as we mature. And I just can clearly now, looking back, see times where I was too immature to recognize that it might actually be okay to go and see a doctor about this because I'm really not okay. But I didn't. And then, when I had my meltdown last year, and even then I still didn't, I could recognize I needed help, but even then I didn't do anything about it. It was only until earlier this year. So I think that's, an important thing. You're right. Like, how do we recognize these moments in ourselves, and what can we do when we do recognize? And maybe that's just something we have to individually learn. And I don't really know the answer because I'm not sure I'm a great example.
I think it kind of ties into, I think, also just being a leader. I think there's like these invisible pressures, I guess, upon like leaders, or like, because I would say you're like a leader, because you run your business and everything.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I just think about that a lot, like leadership roles and what comes with that, But that's like a whole other conversation, I guess I'm going on.
Yeah. Session number 2.
Yeah, we're gonna talk all for day.
Yeah.
And is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Just that I think this is a very pivotal moment in time that 2020 has shaped up, or is shaping up to be. And I think it's been extremely stressful for everyone. We're all in the same or similar boat. So let's just be kind on ourselves, on our friends and family, on our communities, and just kind of slow down, keep charging, but just, remember your mana, remember yourself. And everything will be okay in the end, whether it's to how we want or envision. Initially, it will still be okay, however things work out. And just reach out to your support network if and when you need to, and know that it's okay to not be okay, because this is a really freaking weird time. But also within the really freaking weird time, there's opportunity within the challenges that we're all facing. So just keep your head high and keep looking forward, as well as inwards, to see what can we do better, what things can we work to change, and collaborate and reach out to people.
Want to learn more about the stories of surfers globally, events, and be a part of our community? You can find out more on seetogether.com or our Instagram, c.together.mag. Hope to see you next time. Special thanks to Caroline Belk for music and sound design, and to Katie McDonald for editing.